lot of things being said about the Chicago Sky, looking at and reflecting over the course of the season. I feel like a lot of what's been ignored has been some of the strengths and some of the things in the complementary fashion that the role players have showed over the course of the season. And that's what we're here to talk about on today's episode of CHGO_Sky. Let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of CHGO Sky. I'm here, your host as always, Stephen Prejean Garner. Obviously, the conclusion of the Chicago Sky season has taken place, so it's a different pace to everything. There's a lot of things going on. Exit interviews for Ariel Atkins, Courtney Vandersloot, and Angel Reese was canceled. We were told after the initial faction of the roster had their exit interviews almost 2 weeks ago now that they will be scheduling exit interviews for those three players in particular at a later date. Unfortunately, we did not get that. It is within their right to decline to do interviews. So this is, although it's something that it doesn't happen often, but it's not common, it is something that is exercisable as far as for teams and individual players. So it's unfortunate we didn't get to hear from essentially what would have been for most people or for many people, three, if not three of the four best players on the roster this season, three of the four most important players on the roster moving into the future for this team. Unfortunately, we did not get a chance to hear from those individuals. On the news front outside of that, we also did hear about the Chicago Sky having availability to speak to certain members of the front office that were in attendance for, I guess, a reveal in a sense for what was taking place with the practice facility extension that they're working towards unveiling in the next year or so. So, handful of things happening on the news side of things with the Chicago Sky, even though the season has concluded and it's been done for about 2 weeks now. But we'll be keeping tabs on those things, of course, for you. We'll have some guests on to kind of talk through these things as more news comes up and as we kind of work our way through the off season. So, yeah, appreciate everybody making time to come and check us out. As always, the audio listeners, we always appreciate you all as well. The traditionals, the OGs, if you will, making time to speak, making time to listen with us. So, obviously, our live viewers and our after live viewers on YouTube, we appreciate you all the same. So, let's go ahead and dive into just a little bit of conversation about a few of the role players from the Chicago Sky that I would like to see, if not completely remain with the team, the Sky having pieces in place of said pieces that might go elsewhere to continue to complement and build a process both offensively and defensively and the culture and identity wise around everything that is Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. So first thing I want to speak to, Elizabeth Williams. And I think you could just leave it there. And I think for those that appreciate who she is as an individual player, but also as a team player and a leader, that sentence, just Elizabeth Williams, period, in and of itself, really speaks to exactly the impact and just generally what she is. But as we kind of dive into the details of everything, looking at Ewell on the season, she averaged 8.5 points per game. She got almost 2 assists on average per game, almost a steal and block on average per game as well. And she did a good job of scoring from 2-point range in particular, shooting 48% on nearly 8 attempts a game. So this is a player that was used in multiple unique ways this season, a player that's multifaceted and beyond versatile on both ends of the floor. Although she's not a floor spacer, because of the ways in which she understands how to cut, which is an element of spacing, that allows her to always be in a position to take advantage of what teams are usually going to do when she is spaced outside of the paint area of the floor. And that's helping off of her. If you're helping off of her, you're conceding space. Elizabeth is the IQ and feel type of player that understands that, okay, if you all are helping off of me, I can either trail that person that's helping off of me onto a drive or onto a post up or whatever else might be going on that's getting that extra attention, and be a big threat in terms of catch radius and wingspan around the rim on the cut. She's an elite cutter for her position. And for players that are being kind of helped off of, you have to understand how to manipulate that disadvantage that a defense is trying to work out of into an advantage for your team when you're on offense. So I talked about the cutting part with Elizabeth Williams, and she was sensational with that. She was also great with flashing to space to create high-low scenarios or backdoor cut opportunities for Angel and Camilla around the block area, if not outright in the paint or in the restricted area of the floor. But also for players like Ariel Atkins, players like Kia Nurse, players like Rachel Banham, players like Michaela Onyenwere. A couple of those names we'll be getting to a little bit later in today's episode. But having a high IQ and very smart player in terms of feel, like Elizabeth Williams, to complement everything that the top end pieces are for the Sky was very important this season. And on the defensive end of the floor, which is where she provides the most value, I think she's also just a wrench, an anchor. And that gives a layer of anchorship in addition to everything that when Ariel Atkins is at her best at the point of attack, she provides in multiple capacities in terms of steering the wheel of a possession on defense. And that complements naturally everything that is an additional layer to what Camila Cardoso and Angel Reese are to the defensive end of the floor with their versatility and ability to defend in space and be big athletic pieces, taking away passing lanes and playing gap defense and all of the integral things that are needed to be successful on a defensive possession in this WNBA, with teams trying to create space, and your ability to shrink space, show bodies and gaps, and ultimately take away space with activity on the defensive end. Other big thing with Elizabeth Williams, naturally, if you're speaking to her, you're going to be talking about someone that is rebounding the basketball well in some capacity too. And naturally, we see that with her averaging 5.2 rebounds per game this season. But I want to look at specifically the 1.8 offensive rebounds per game that she grabbed. She's a player that instantly kind of infuses some value added on the margins for a team. So you're looking at margins, you're thinking about opportunities where there's 50-50 scenarios, whether that be a loose ball, whether that be a rebound, whether that be an opportunity to create turnovers and get unscripted points. And that goes the same for offensive rebounds, 50-50 scenarios. A shot is missed. Each team has the equal amount of chance of going to corral the shot that was missed. Naturally, when you look at teams trying to get back in transition, you don't commit as many bodies to the glass when you miss a shot as you do where your opponents do. So there's usually a numbers disadvantage that you're at because you want to be aiding your transition defense and getting back on that end to get your defense set. What Elizabeth Williams does well is, especially when she's on the floor with one of Angel Reese or Camila Cardoso, whichever one of those two players is the lowest to the baseline is usually given opportunity to freelance and read the game. If they see an opportunity to put pressure on opponents and go for an offensive rebound, because they have one of the other two in that trio of front court players on the court with them, that allows for them to be more aggressive, knowing that someone is able to anchor the transition defense on the other side should they not come up with the extra possession. It's playing the risk and reward game. The reward being the extra possession is as high value as anything when you're a team that has some of the struggles that the Sky did in the half court. You want to gain as many extra possessions, get as many shots on goal as you possibly can. Elizabeth Williams, per 36 minutes, had a offensive rebound rate of grabbing 3.1 on average per 36 minutes. That's a number that would be elite, absolutely elite, if she was playing a range of minutes that was closer to 30-ish minutes a game. Naturally, because of the way that their front court rotations spliced out over the course of the season, that runway just wasn't extended consistently. But in the stretches where she was able to play a nice handful of minutes on average, she was getting things done for them. And I'm looking specifically at that stretch of games where post All-Star break, Angel Reese was out of the lineup, and she was able to kind of be extended a little bit more of a runway than she normally would. And in that kind of stretch of games, we saw Elizabeth Williams really just finding ways to add value and impact in the lineups that she was used in. A lot of the times being on the court in the double big situations that we're kind of speaking to with Camila Cardoso on the floor. Ewill's a wrench. She's just a piece that's going to always find ways to be positive. She will never be a negative to any lineups or any team construct that she's kind of being infused into. And you just simply, when you have top end pieces like Camilla and Angel that are young, you can't have enough veteran type pieces like that are going to just find ways to be a glue piece, find ways to add value and add impact and not take away from what a team is trying to work towards. Ewell even got to the point where this season, stemming from what she was doing last season before the injury and the season before that with the Chicago Sky, taking that mid-range shot. Sometimes it will come in a high-low situation. Sometimes it will be a short roll situation. Sometimes she would flash the space and it would space off of her to try to take away that high-low pass that the Sky loved to manipulate. And she would just settle and take that kind of around the free throw area or elbow area of the floor, mid-range pull-up. And that was a shot that was efficient for her this season as well. So I would love to see Elizabeth Williams back with the team as we see them transitioning into another season where there's going to be expansion and you're going to have to make a decision on multiple players. Ewell might be a player that's on the fence for them just because of the depth that they do have in the front court between Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. But she's a player I would love to see stick around if they were able to keep her around. But she's going to be a piece that adds value regardless of what context of a team she might be going into or operating in. Next on the list of players that we're going to be speaking to is Rachel Banham. So obviously Big Mama, as they called her endearingly. Rachel Banham is a player that played more roles for the Chicago Sky team than any other player did this season. And that speaks to, for one, how versatile of a player she is on the offensive end of the floor, how much of an engine she is for an offense in terms of the ways in which she's able to help the team stay afloat and do different things like that on the offensive end. She just gets it. And I think that's the most concise way to put it. She gets it. She understands it. On the season, she averaged 9 points per game. That's the most points that she's averaged in a season over the course of her career. And that speaks to her ability to shoulder the brunt of multiple types of usage, but not lose her impact in the piece that is her biggest impact that she's bringing to the floor. And that's being able to put the ball in the basket, especially from three-point range. Rachel was one of the best three-point shooters in the WNBA this season in terms of total makes. And on average this season, she averaged 2 makes a game on 5.5 attempts at 35.7%. That number in particular, the 35.7%, when you put it in tandem with her volume of threes taken at 5.5, is exactly what you want to see from her. I think she showed glimpses of what she could be for the Chicago Sky after the trade that they made mid-season last year. When they had her for 16 games, she started 9, played about 20 minutes a game, knocked down 1.8 threes on 4.5 attempts at 38%. That's a player that is playing a specific role and getting it done. For a roster construct the season before last, when they got her, they did not have many players that were garnering urgent types of closeouts and making help defenders make decisions on if they want to stay attached to Rachel or if they want to kind of help on, let's just say, a Lindsey Allen or Kennedy Carter drive in the season before this past. Or obviously with this season, when she spaced the pass away from Ariel Atkins, it's probably not going to be any help coming from that area of the floor because of the prowess of shooter that she is. But also, them blending in her usage and finding ways to uniquely use her to both manipulate opportunity for their posts, but also manipulate opportunity for Rachel on the backside. And that's her being used as a screener. She's one of the better small screeners in the entire W. I'll start with the inverted pick and rolls. Her ability to set screens for Angel Reese is as complimentary as any other skill for any other player across the team because of the ways that it can put pressure on opponents. The Sky flirted with and kind of were varied in their approach over the course of the season, trying to find the best angles and route in the screens for their small screeners to ultimately set screens for Angel Reese when she had the ball in her hands, especially in kind of drag situations where Angel would grab one of her many rebounds on the defensive end, and rather than outletting it to a guard, she's just grabbing and going up the floor. When she was able to kind of get into these situations where she's getting in these grab and goes, and her guards, especially Rachel and Kia, understand that because they don't have to be available for an outlet when it's Angel or even Ariel at times, they can just fill a deep corner in transition and put pressure on the transition defense. And from there, that's where the beauty of Rachel and Kia in particular comes in, because if Angel's bringing it up the floor, let's say she's in the slot area or the outer third area of the floor, one of those two players that's filling that deep corner can just set an early step up screen. It's flat, and Angel can kind of play to either direction that she wants to go and using that screen, or one of those two players that's screening for her can just pop and it'll get a reaction because defenses are not going to want Angel to turn the corner. And if she does happen to turn the corner or get contact on one of those guards aren't going to want to switch that action because Angel's just going to walk them to the post. They're probably going to foul her, and she might score while she's getting fouled. So because of the stress that puts on the defense, that would put the shooters then in position to be successful by having a defense rotating towards them with like 19 or 20 seconds on the shot clock. And when the Sky were able to get into their half-court offense with a tempo and flow like that, rather than it being 16 or close to 15 seconds and they're just now getting into action, they got a defense scrambling and rotating, even if it's just one player with 20 seconds in the clock. That's where some of their best offense came from comprehensively across the season. And integral to that was the roles of Kia Nurse, who I'll be getting to a little bit later, and obviously Rachel Banham, who's the topic right now. And to that point, she got a lot of catch and shoot three-point opportunities because of the ways in which the Sky were able to put pressure on the rim, whether that be via the Michaela Onyenwere post-ups, who we'll get to a little bit later, Angel post-ups, Camilla post-ups, E-Will touches in the paint, and them being able to work with each other and kind of find ways to flatten the defense and then stretch them with kick-out passes and spray passes. Rachel was the recipient of a lot of those. But I think the other big thing before we get into our first ad break or our ad break for this episode is Rachel being able to shoulder the brunt of a lot of initiating at the point of attack. When Ariel went down, well, even before when Ariel went down, early in the season, Rachel was playing as one of the best players on the team because of her shooting prowess and the volume and the impact that it had on the defense. The other piece in that as well, once you saw Courtney Vandersloot go down, that put more pressure on Ariel and Rachel in particular to be able to initiate offense more and operate in pick and roll. Rather, early in the season, they would be doing it more as screeners. After Courtney went down, they had to do it more as handlers. And both of those two players were up to the task. To the point specific with Rachel, the feel for the game that she would put on display with Camila Cardoso in particular, especially when Angel was out of the lineup, it was one of the best actions in terms of points per possession or points per chance when those two players weren't actions together across the season for the Sky. Rachel's prowess as a shooter, Camilla setting good screens, opportunity for Rachel to take threes if that big is not at the level. And if that big was at the level, she was great with making touch passes, not necessarily pocket passes, but a touch pass over that big that's guarding Camila Cardoso to hit Camila on the roll, and that putting pressure on the team going downhill. So I want to shout out to Big Mama Rachel Banham. Very, very impressive season. I think she's going to be a piece because of how early she was in the gym with Tyler Marsh shortly thereafter he was hired, and kind of getting things and allowing for them to build up sweat equity and establish a foundation layer. I think she's a piece they're going to value. She's also been a great teammate for this team the entire season as well. And for those reasons, I think she's a piece that they need to keep around. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into our first ad break, or our only ad break for this episode. So stick with me as we kind of pay the bills, if you will, and then we'll get right back to the second half. All right, I'm here to tell you guys about First Pitch. So First Pitch, I want to also mention, hey, coaches, specific to coaches, listen up. If you're looking to train athletes more, you want to have a way to keep your eye on the ball, that's where you want to be with keeping your eye on the ball. It's simple. You create your profile, upload your background check, and boom, you're in. It's simple. All you need to do is just create a profile. You have new promo for coaches, and it's on free for 6 months. So you want to make sure you tap in with that in this opportunity to extend opportunities to make your players better by tapping in with this. And to that point, after the promo, it's just $50 a month or $500 for the whole year for athletes all ages and sports to benefit, and you can find it directly for them. And here's the best part. Eye on the Ball doesn't mess with your schedule or your payments or your business. You're in full control. We just connect with you and your athletes who are already looking for a coach like you. So to that point, if you're ready to grow your coaching business and reach more athletes, go check it out right now. Eye on the Ball, EYEONTHEBALL.net. EyeOnTheBall.net. That's it. Don't wait. The athletes are already there and they're looking directly for you. And the second half of this, we want to also speak to the athletes. All right, athletes, here's a question. Are you serious about leveling up your game? If you are, there's coaches that are right for you via eye on the ball. And I want to make sure you understand that, because the right coach can change everything for an athlete. And now you can also find that easier way to find that right coach with eye on the ball. It doesn't matter if you're a kid just starting out or competing at the top level. You can sign up totally free at eyeontheball.net. Create your profile, search through coaches in your sport, and connect directly with the ones that are right for you. From soccer to swimming to baseball or basketball, you name it, the coaches are there. So what are you waiting for? Your future could be via one link click away. Just jump on it today at eyeontheball.net. Again, that's eyeontheball.net. Find your coach and take your game to the next level. I also want to talk to you all about Shady Rays. Now, if you've been listening to us for the last handful of years, you know that Shady Rays has been attached to the hip and lockstep with everything that is CHGO for quite some time now, and they're back again. You know that moment, the one where you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach, on the roof of your car, or at the gas station 3 states away. I've definitely been there too. Trust me, I feel your pain. That's why you want to be tapped in with Shady Rays. For me personally, especially with me having moved and kind of shifted around and being in sun a little bit more, opportunity to kind of have discounted glasses and someone that also backs you up on the insurance side in case of emergency if your sunglasses break or they're stolen or you leave them somewhere. Shady Rays being able to back you up in the ways in which they do and give you that assurance via their insurance is all you want in terms of partnership. You want someone that you're investing in to have your back the way that you're, to the extent that you're investing in them. And what better way than to be able to supply you with your sunglasses and have you never feeling like you're without an essential need for blocking your eyes and keeping your eyes healthy when you're spending a lot of time outside or in the sun. That's where Shady Rays is the best for you. And to that point, I want to make sure you know about these promos that Shady Rays have. As we've teamed up with them again to bring you an exclusive offer. I want to make sure you head to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO. And again, that's CHGO in all caps for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. You want to make sure you try them out for yourself. Rated a 5, and it's rated a 5-star by over 300,000 people. Again, Shady Rays. You know the name, you know they're attached with us as always, and you know how much we appreciate them. Make sure you tap in with it. All right, as we get back to the second half of this show, transitioning from everything that was Elizabeth Williams as well as Rachel Banham, one of the third kind of rungs in the role player realm, and I think there's more than just the 4 that we're getting to, but for constraints of time purposes, we'll only keep it to 4. I want to speak to Michaela Onyenwere. So Michaela Onyenwere is a player that has all types of versatility. She's a player that, not necessarily to the same extent that Rachel Banham had this season, but in a similar ilk of Rachel, is a player that had to play multiple roles to make this team construct work. I think that part is important because, again, for players that are going to be glue pieces for a team, especially of the veteran realm, you want to have them be capable and able to just play any role that a game might demand and be able to keep a team afloat in terms of the lineups that they're working in. And one of my favorite things about Michaela is the time that she was able to spend on the floor with Angel Reese, whether it was Angel at the 5 and Michaela at the 4, or it was some iteration of Angel at the 4 with any of Camilla or Elizabeth Williams at the 5, and Michaela was at the 3. That ability for Angel and Michaela to be on the floor at the same time was so important for the Chicago Sky this season, especially for me in particular, because their ability to just switch a lot of the actions that Angel might be involved in, whether that be an off-ball screen or going against let's just say the Minnesota Lynx, and you get Nafisa Collier and Kayla McBride setting screens for each other, whether it be Nafisa setting pin downs from Kayla McBride to come off of, or them inverting that, and Michaela setting pin down, and Kayla McBride setting pin downs for Nafisa Collier. Those two players in particular, Michaela Onyenwere and Angel Reese, just being able to switch those actions and put pressure on opponents or take away some of the actions or the rhythm of the actions that opponents like to get into, so important. Michaela being able to hold up in a post against any 4 in the league, but also being able to go out on the perimeter and guard any 3 or 2 in the league is just so important as kind of a interconnected piece to build out a defensive process with. She started a handful of games for the team down the stretch. She ultimately started 22 of her 42 games played. Very important. And again, speaks to and highlights the role and the versatility in that role, that adaptability as a glue player that she brought to the team. So her defense, very important. I wanted to start there. Her multiple efforts, her ability to find ways to pitch in and chip in on the glass at timely moments. Her ability, like I mentioned, to guard up or guard down from that 3 spot, guarding up to 4s and being able to guard 5s and hold up against multiple types of 5s, but also being able to do a great job of guarding down and being able to go down to guarding 2s at times. Very just another type of wrench, different thing and unique from the wrench that Elizabeth Williams was, but the same in terms of being able to be a steadying hand and a kind of calming presence just because of her moxie, if you will, her veteran presence. And that disposition for a younger team is very, very important. To that point, on the offensive end of the floor, we saw some ups and downs with her in terms of the 3-point shooting, but her corner 3-point shooting was something that was very important for this Sky team. Her ability to knock down those shots and do so without hesitating often. Very important for a team that needs more players that can create space or execute when opponents are trying to concede that spacing to them. And the other big thing for Michaela, and I want to shout out Siobhan because she was on it no different than I was the season before last. And that's Michaela being able to get to these post-up situations. So last season, sometimes they would run flex actions for obviously Angel and Camilla, but they will also sprinkle in opportunity for Angel and Camilla to be the pieces that are ultimately making that pass into the post for Michaela Onyenwere. And Michaela being able to play to either shoulder, being able to get middle, get separation, get into a 1 or 2 dribble fadeaway, going towards the middle of the paint, being able to get to that 1 or 2 dribble, play off of her pivots and get into step throughs and step arounds and things like that. Very important. Having players that can punish switches. Teams would just concede sometimes switches when Michaela was screening or being screened for. Her ability to just punish those switches, especially if it's a smaller player that's coming in to ultimately guard her, very, very important. I think as the Sky build out their nucleus for offense and they continue to evolve within that, teams are going to try to switch a little bit more of the actions that aren't included in Angel Reese or Camila Cardoso. Having switch beaters like an individual presence like Michaela Onyenwere is extremely important to just kind of keeping a pace, keeping a flow, and being able to just stay in advantage as teams work to kind of create a little bit of disadvantage for you. So that part been very important to everything that they were doing. I think was really good for them. So just generally speaking, Michaela Onyenwere on the season averaged 1.6 rebounds, 1.1 assists. And she was also able to do a good job of just scoring and finding opportunities in a kind of periphery role of scoring on the margins. Average 5.8. She was really good in transition as well when they were able to find ways to play off of stops and get into their transition spacing and the layers within that. I would like to see Michaela Onyenwere remain with the team going into next season as well. As far as the players that they're going to attempt to or work to protect, I think she's a piece that will continue to grow, not just in playing with Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso, adding value to everything that it is that Tyler Marsh wants to do on the defensive end of the floor, but also being a piece that Tyler Marsh can really start to dig in with in terms of the skill development side of things, which is his strength. I know everybody talks about what he did with Jackie Young, and that's not a 1-for-2 or 1-for-1 in terms of comparison of Michaela Onyenwere to Jackie Young in terms of her game, but they do have similarities. And that's a player archetype that Tyler Marsh clearly has recent success in terms of showing that he's able to work and get the most out of those types of players. One of the best ways to build buy-in is to show a player that you understand the type of player that they are and that you can put them in positions to be the best version of themselves. The other side of it is maximizing the roster that you have. I think that Michaela Onyenwere is a piece that aligns directly with that, in particular with Tyler Marsh. And I think there's a very good type of vibe and frequency that they operate with in terms of her understanding what he's demanding from her and her being able to demand on those demands, but also do or execute on those demands, but also do a little bit more than what he's asking for from her as well. So I imagine if they're able to get a year or two of that partnership, she's going to look better, find ways to add more value, and continue to be a piece that's integral to everything that it is that they're doing. All right, last name that I want to speak to on today's episode of CHGO Sky is Kia Nurse. So Kia is a player that started the season in the starting lineup. Ultimately, just because of fit things and just her even more so than fit, hitting a kind of rough stretch in terms of making shots from deep that they were able to create for her. She wasn't able to sustain in that starting role. But again, a player that's been to the finals before, a player that has played an integral piece on teams that have won at high levels before, a player that's been around the block a handful of times and understands the adaptability of the role that she's going to be playing for any given team, whether that be defensively, guarding a lot of points of attack, but also being able to find ways to chip in and help a defensive process in the gaps. And then on the offensive end of the floor, being a player that's running some secondary pick and rolls. They can initiate offense for you at times to alleviate ball pressure that's being applied to other primary ball handlers. Being a player that can be used uniquely to pry open some of your post players or pry open some of your other players that can shoot well, or shooting well herself and coming off of screens like wide pin downs and wide action and different things like that. No different than I mentioned with Rachel Banham, her also having that ability to set some of those inverted pick and roll screens for not just Angel Reese, but also Camila Cardoso at times. Very, very important to a team that's trying to work to get to a certain level in terms of having varied ways in which they can operate on the offensive end of the floor, but also exist on the defensive end. Kia Nurse has a great disposition about her. She's a player that's not going to hurt a team, no different than, like I mentioned, with Michaela and Rachel and Elizabeth, because of that just veteran know-how. Understanding, okay, if the team is operating well and I'm on the second side, what can I do to kind of manipulate and create opportunity for play or advantage creation outside of the primary action? So imagine there's a pick and roll happening on the strong side with, let's just say, Ariel Atkins and Angel Reese. And it's those two players in pick and roll. Someone's going to get helped off of on the backside because teams are not going to want to concede that roll opportunity for Angel Reese getting downhill comfortably. With that, that means that if you're conceding an extra defender in the 2 versus 2, that means that there's an advantage to the backside numbers wise. That's 3-on-2. You have to have veteran players that understand and are selfless enough to know, okay, I know I'm a 35, 36% three-point shooter, and I knock down my catch and shoots at closer to 40%. But I'm also on the floor with other players that are good, that I trust because I've seen them put in the work and that I know can knock down similar types of shots that I can. So are we all gonna stand there and watch this action as we're in the 3 versus 2 and allow for the defense to not have to pay for trying to play 3 offensive players with 2? Or are you going to find a way to manipulate that 3 versus 2 and create a numbers advantage on top of what already is that as a template in 3 versus 2? Rachel being a player, no different than Beck Allen, who won't be spoken on this episode, but we will in future episodes, is a player no different than Beck Allen that's prompt with setting pin-in screens, setting flare screens to manipulate and create even more of an advantage on top of what's already being conceded. You just can't put a value on players that not just are selfless enough to do that, but understand the rhythm and timing with which, when you do so, can either create more opportunity or sometimes it'll make a defender hesitate on wanting to concede to the strong side because they understand what's being manipulated on the backside. And now that just leaves more opportunity for players like Ariel and Angel to work in space. So just little things like that IQ, that processing of things in real time, not a scripted play, but just players playing and read and react off of their own will in their own field. You just simply can't put a value on those things. And I just want to make sure we shine some light on the periphery because the top end pieces have been getting a lot of attention for multiple reasons, and understandably so. Those are the pieces that have driven this team, and you were expecting a little bit more from that faction of the team comprehensively. But you also don't want to forget about the pieces that were also integral in making those things work. Sometimes doing things that aren't the most forgiving, setting screens for those players to get open, doing little things like I mentioned with Kia Nurse, no different than with Beck Allen or Rachel Banham or even Michaela Onyenwere, to make their spacing context and their spacing process work. Those little things truly matter. All of these players will be speaking significantly more on as we get throughout the rest of the offseason. But I want to take some time to shine some light on those 4 players in particular: Elizabeth Williams, Rachel Banham, Michaela Onyenwere, and Kia Nurse, because I think that their seasons are going to be not valued the ways in which they should be because of the attention and the spotlight on the top end of the roster. Whether all 4 of those players are back next season is up in the air at the moment. I imagine if I had to guess, at least 2 of those 4 will be back next season. But again, like I mentioned at the top of the show before we got to Elizabeth Williams, if it's not all 4 of these players or even 2 of these 4 players or even 1 of these 4 players that coming back next season, I think what's understood with the body of work this season on both ends of the floor is that this team needs players that are cut from a similar cloth in terms of archetype, but also between the ears and processing the game that Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso are going to need from the periphery, from an ancillary role with this team to make it be the best version of itself. Now, you want to have more continuity. You want to have more season and experience under your belt going forward. You don't want to have so much roster overturn and overhauling with each season that passes. I think the best blueprint and examples of that, you look at the nucleus of the Las Vegas Aces this season. You look at everything that was the Minnesota Lynx this season. Though both of those teams went through changes, even on the coaching side of things, as far as assistant coaches. What you did see, though, is a nucleus of players that and coaches that have been around and pieces that have been through the fire. They've seen lows, they've seen highs, they've seen in between. That allows for you to navigate the highs and lows of an individual game, but also a 44-game season with a lot more buy-in, a lot more. We've been there before, we've done that before, so we know how to work through and address these things. Having that experience is truly invaluable, and I think that's something that the Chicago Sky should be looking to value while adding on top of that layer of having some experience to work off of going forward. So that's what we got for you all for today's CHGO Sky podcast. Appreciate you all tapping in. As always, you audio listeners riding out, listening to us, whether you're at the gym, whether you're riding in the car, whether you're going on a walk with your dog, or you're at work. We appreciate you all. Obviously, you visual watchers on YouTube, whether you're watching live, what's up to y'all? I appreciate y'all, but also those that are watching back a little bit later. Thank you for tapping in. Let's continue the conversation in the comments. Speak to what you liked, maybe what you didn't like from either one of the 4 players that we spoke to on today's show. Let me know what you think about those players being involved with the roster going forward, how you see them fitting with the nucleus of the roster, maybe how you see them not fitting, or maybe role players that you feel like the Sky should be targeting going forward into next season to build around everything that is Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. Let's keep the conversation going. If you want to hit us up in the comments on YouTube, you can certainly do that. But obviously, even more so for me personally, hitting us up on Twitter at CHGO_Sky, which is where the show tweets are always being put out from. But you can also obviously check me out individually at StephenPG3, STEPHENPG3. You ever want to talk Chicago Sky, feel free to direct message me. Feel free to hit me up on the timeline. Just make sure you at me. If you want to talk basketball, you want to do so from a learning or an unbiased or non-agenda pushing perspective, I'm always down. And I think there's a lot of conversations to be had about the Chicago Sky team going forward into what will be the 3rd season of Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso together, but the 2nd under Tyler Marsh in particular. So tap in with us there on Twitter. Y'all be safe out there. Enjoy these WNBA playoffs because they are delivering beyond measure. And just find the team, find an individual player, and just find some ways to continue to learn and see things in those teams or in those individual players that you might want to see more of in the players or the team with the Chicago Sky going forward. So tap in with us. Let's continue to clean up the discourse in women's basketball because the high value product on the court deserves it. Let's continue to be great. We'll talk to y'all soon. Be blessed and appreciate y'all.
We all silly like the mayor.